The NFC, and we're going to start off up north in Seattle. Let's take a look at the Seahawks and who they took with their picks. And, of course, Malik McDowell, no picks in the first round for Seattle, which is not a surprise. This is a team that has really kind of gotten away from first-round picks in recent years. But that means they're trying to find value. And where do you see that on that board, Bucky?
Value. Ethan Posek from LSU is a valuable pick for them. I think he's a guy that can come in and solidify an offensive line that has been leaky at best. This is a team that hasn't been able to necessarily run the football or dominate the line of scrimmage the last couple of years. He gives them a pivot that is physical enough to move people off the ball, smart enough to make all the calls and checks along the line of scrimmage. Should be a nice fit in Tom Cable's scheme.
It is kind of a head-scratcher, though, the scratchy O-line play that they've gotten. You see them 27th in sacks allowed, 25th in rushing yards per game in the league. Obviously, that is an area of concern.
I like that you're looking to me for answers when I want to ask the same question I think you're thinking is why not get more pass protection? You know, I watched this team against the Bucs in Tampa, man, and Russell Wilson couldn't even get a pass off. Got sacked 6 times, hit about 20 times. Buck, were you surprised that they didn't address tackle, or was that more a thing of, hey, everybody wanted to address that position, but it just wasn't here in this draft?
It wasn't there in this draft. I think that's the unusual thing. In this draft, they want a lot of offensive tackles that you could come in and put right on the field and say they can start and they're going to upgrade the talent that you currently have. They did a good job by focusing their efforts on getting an interior player who has some position versatility. It'll help them because as they like to reshuffle the deck on a week-by-week basis, it seemed like he is a guy that should be a valuable commodity.
Well, just as there was not as much talent this year on the offensive line, there was a lot of talent in the secondary and a lot of talent on the defensive line as well, and that's where you go for your surprise pick.
Malik McDowell from Michigan State was one of the more talented defensive tackles in this draft class, but he is an enigma when it comes to trying to figure out which guy's going to show up. There's some games you turn on the tape, he looks like an absolute monster. There are other times where he doesn't play hard. You wonder if he's ever going to have an opportunity to make it in the league. I like it because in Seattle, they have a culture of accountability when it comes to the players holding their peers accountable. If he buys in, this could be a Pro Bowl player. And if they get a Pro Bowl player on the inside, look out, because that defense is already lights out.
But it also speaks to Seattle, how they go find these guys and they coach them up, and they really believe in their system and their coaches and their ability to get them ready to be on the field.
Hey, you know, Bucky makes fun of me because I always bring things back to Dallas. You know, that's who I grew up watching. This guy reminds me of Leon Lett a little bit. Leon Lett could destroy games at times, and then he would disappear, and that's the book on this guy. I'm a little surprised that this is where they decided to go in the draft, but man, if he plays like the good tape, right, then they're in good shape.
Got to grade the flashes. They're hoping that the flashes come to fruition. If it does, it would lead to a good grade. I gave them a B- on their grade just because the inconsistencies of this guy and also Nazir Jones, if they play, they can really help this team go back to the next level.
Let's go to San Francisco, and certainly a lot of question marks coming into this draft. How would John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan run things? And man, you look at the first-round haul alone. That may be, if both of those guys hit, I think you can say this year was a success. But, Bucky, your favorite when you look at that board?
You know, I love the first 2 picks, but I'm going to say the favorite is Solomon Thomas. I'm going to credit John Lynch in trying to remake the 49ers in the image of his championship teams in Tampa. You have to have someone that can dominate inside. You have to have someone on the second level and someone in the third level. And what they have in Solomon Thomas is someone that can dominate a la Warren Sapp up front. Quick with his hands, outstanding motor, non-stop competitive nature. You like the spirit, you like the toughness. I believe he's going to be a monster for them. And in this scheme that is much like Seattle, he is the Michael Bennett playmaker for them.
But even if both of those guys hit, I mean, maybe you need John Lynch himself to suit up and play like he did back in his days, because you look at the numbers for the San Francisco defense last year. Last in points per game allowed at 30, last in yards per game allowed. Obviously, you need more than just 2 guys to fix that, right, Elliot?
You are a negative Nancy right
I'm just
now.
calling a spade a spade.
Come on, man. You can't do it all in one draft. You know, I thought they knocked last year's pick out of the park, and now you have, their top pick, and then you have Solomon Thomas to add to that defensive line. I thought John Lynch, it's funny, my first thought after the draft was, boy, John Lynch sure is shy his first year as GM. My goodness, man, he was just making moves like a veteran. I'm with Bucky. I like this pick a lot.
I even think maybe even more than just the pick, it was that trade that netted them so much value from the Bears. But you look at a guy that surprises you, and you want to go toward the end of that first round when they took Reuben Foster.
Yeah, Reuben Foster, because I'm surprised that he was there at the bottom of the first round. This is a guy that was probably a top 5 talent in this draft. In fact, the 49ers had him as one of their top 3 players on the board. So to get 2 of your top 3 players in the first round, one at the bottom, one at the top, you have to be outstanding. And when you look at the B-roll, people are going to look at these highlights, and you see a grown man, someone that is vicious and violent in his approach. They haven't had someone like this in the middle since Patrick Willis left. So now you pair Reuben Foster with Navarro Bowman. You have a young, athletic defensive line. They're back on their way to having a championship caliber defense. And the last time we saw them with a championship caliber defense, we also saw them in the Super Bowl.
But you and I talked about him before the draft even. He may be just as valuable in the room when he is, helping the rest of his defense get on the same page, because he's a guy with a lot of football knowledge. And overall, how does that affect the grade?
He's a natural leader. Both of these guys are terrific players. I don't think there's a lot of bust potential in them. I'm going to give them an A for their efforts. And it's not only John Lynch. I got to make sure that we talk about Adam Peters and Martin Mayhew, the guys that he has around him putting it together. They did a great job of picking the best players available in each round.
Yeah, Mark, I mentioned they knocked it out of the park. I thought last year's pick, DeVorest Buckner, now Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster. I mean, you're starting to put some pieces together, and maybe they have one more good draft next year, and we won't be joking about the 49ers anymore, that's for sure.
It certainly feels like there's some optimism around this team. It's heading in the right direction. I think the next team we're going to talk about, the Cardinals, a lot of question marks. Last year, coming into the 2016 season, certainly a trendy Super Bowl pick. Obviously, that season did not go as well as they wanted to. They want to get back to greatness, and they hope Hassan Reddick can help them do so. And, Bucky, you think that is the best pick they made in this draft?
That is the best pick, because this is a guy that is a nasty player, a versatile player, a guy that is one of those what I call front 7 hybrids. He can play outside, he can play inside, he can play at the line of scrimmage and blitz, he can play off the ball and really run from sideline to sideline. This is a defense, the Arizona Cardinals, that likes to use multiple fronts, hybrid personnel to really keep the offense off balance. He's another hybrid. You don't know where he's going to come from. And so when you think about how they can put all the pieces of the puzzle together, they're going to give you problems, because they move around. They do a bunch of different things on defense that make it tough for the quarterback to figure it out.
If you're his coach at Temple, Matt Rule, you got to be happy that he goes to a team that is so good on defense. But again, that's a question, Elliot. They're so good on defense. Is he the piece that they needed?
Well, to me, I think we're all trying to figure out what the Cardinals are. Are they the team that went 7-8-1 last year? Are they a team, Mark, that was at the Super Bowl's doorstep until Carson Palmer threw, 5 interceptions in that championship game?
He just threw another one.
Come on. See what I mean? You are so negative sometimes. But they did help the secondary in this draft. I do think that they made some nice picks in this draft, but I'm still wondering what's the MO. And a lot of people, Bucky, were speculating, would this be a team that would move up to get a quarterback for some Carson Palmer insurance? And that didn't happen.
It just didn't play out for them. I think they obviously wanted to consider if they could find a quarterback in the future. It didn't work. But when you think about Hassan Reddick, and then later they went and got Budda Baker, 2 hybrid players that can move around. We've seen how they've utilized Honey Badger and Deion Buchanan. It is tough to deal with this defense. Part of the reason they've been so successful, they can hit you with so many different pitches, so many different guys that can make an impact from the second level.
Versatility, man.
For you, the surprise pick was on the offensive side of the football.
Chad Williams was a surprise pick, not because he's not a good player. He comes from Grambling State, which is a long and historically proud program, but I don't know if they necessarily needed a wide receiver at that point in the draft. I know you were thinking in the first round maybe they would get someone like a Mike Williams, Corey Davis, those guys weren't there, but to take this guy in the 3rd round is a bit of surprise. On tape, however, he's a talented player. He was eating up Arizona during the year last year. Big-time playmaker. We'll just see how long will the transition be for him to go from being a small school standout to being a big-time playmaker in the National Football League.
Well, yeah, the question is how soon can he get on the field and contribute?
Yeah, and, Everson Walls went to Grambling. I just did that for you. I had to pull up a Cowboy
HBCUs.
I think your question's appropriate. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald coming back. They've got J.J. Nelson, who's an absolute burner. John Brown, who it seems like they throw 1 vertical ball per half to.
More productive than people realize, too, by the way.
Absolutely. So I had the same question you do. How much is he going to get on the field? But again, sometimes, as Bucky's already mentioned multiple times, it's how the pieces fall when it comes to you. And you may say, they should have taken a guard there. Maybe there wasn't another guard for a round and a half worthy of being drafted that high. So once you get into the lower rounds, I try not to be as critical.
What's the grade, Bucky?
I'm going to give them a B+. Solid, because I love their first 2 picks. Hassan Reddick and Budda Baker, these guys are really going to help the defense. They are versatile, dynamic, electric. They can really knock you out. Maybe they don't have to score a lot of points because their defense won't surrender many.
Let's come back home, shall we, and take a look at the Los Angeles Rams for our final team here in the West. And there you see their picks. No first-rounders, of course, after they traded that away last season to get Jared Goff. But, Bucky, when you take a look at that list, who's the guy that stands out to you as their best pick?
Overall with this draft, this thing is all about Jared Goff. It's about trying to help Jared Goff live up to expectations as a franchise quarterback. Cooper Kupp is the guy that stands out to me because I think he's going to be the most productive of all those pass catches there. Cooper Kupp is a terrific number 3 receiver, someone that can go in space, in the slot, create big plays, but also go on the outside. Natural route runner, dependable hands. And when you think about the Rams and what has been their biggest issue, they can't catch the ball consistently. The one thing that I know about Cooper Kupp, if you throw it anywhere near him, he's going to snag it. In this offense that Sean McVay is introducing the West Coast system, you need pass catchers and guys that can make plays after catch and run concepts. Cooper Kupp is one of those guys.
Sorry, I just got to rub my eyes. That red field is all.
Oh, yeah, it's too much for you?
Ooh, yeah, that's a lot. But as you look at this pick, is a cup of Coop going to be enough to help this offense? Because, man, it was painful last season.
You know, on Fantasy Live, when we would talk the Rams wide receivers, the first word that would always come out was avoid. That was the first word every time. But people picked on Kenny Britt a lot. But Kenny Britt was the most productive player in this offense. The thing that I wonder here, Bucky, is you mentioned Cooper Kupp potentially playing outside. How realistic is that early on? Because don't you really think of Tavon Austin as more of the slot guy in their offense, or can they work them both in that way? What do you think?
I think you're working both in his version of the West Coast offense. If you think about Cooper Kupp may play the Pierre Garçon role. If you think about it coming from the Washington Redskins, Pierre Garçon plays outside. He could go inside in certain formations. He gives them the versatility because he's done so much at Eastern Washington. I believe the big thing for them is, what do you do with Tavon Austin? It's on Tavon Austin right now. He got paid. It's time for him to show up. They got to figure out a way to get the production to match the compensation out of Austin.
Talking about production as well, for your surprise pick, it's a guy that they hope that can give them some production too, Gerald Everett.
Gerald Everett. I think when you look at offensive coordinators, an offensive coordinator who's now the head coach, you got to go back and look at his history. When I'm looking at what Sean McVay did in Washington, I think about Jordan Reed and the role that he played. I'm just surprised that last year, after taking Tyler Higbee, they go back to the well, take another tight end. But this is a guy that can play that Jordan Reed-like role for them. Split him out, put him in space, create mismatches. They've surrounded Jared Goff with a number of different weapons. Let's see if the young quarterback can kind of connect the dots with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, a lot of interesting tight ends to look at this year, but you think he could have an impact? If he does, how does that affect the grade?
You know, I give them a C right now. It's just an average effort because I don't know if they're notable stars, guys that can come in. There are a lot of question marks about the overall impact that these guys will make, but I understand the blueprint and what they're doing. We'll see if these guys are good enough to help them get it done.
You know, I was just doing a little mathematics, and I believe that the Los Angeles Chargers, if I carried the one right here and everything, yeah, they have the highest grade out of all these teams. How about that?
Yeah.
That's the only one you gave a glowing grade. And I also have to point out that Rams white helmet graphic, it's going to take some getting used. You talked about the Los Angeles Chargers. I got to get used to the Rams' new look this year. I hope it translates into 8 or 9 wins. That'd be great.
I got to get used to the idea of a draft being held in Kansas City.
Hey, you know what? Enough with that.
Hey, that is it for us. You can catch all of Bucky's draft grades by checking out his article up on NFL.com. You can catch all of our draft grade videos there as well, or on YouTube. But in the meantime, thank you for hanging out with us. That is Draft Grades Live, presented by Bud Light.